I do think that there is something to like the last couple of years. You think back to that season where they won so many one-score games. There was a little bit of an aura where it's like, all right, we're late in games. This is where we make mistakes and they make the plays. Some of that is gone. Teams don't go into Arrowhead clutching their pearls like they used to. They're not unbeatable anymore.
All right, well, we're excited to be joined by Price Carter over at Arrowhead Addict tonight to talk some Chiefs football. Yes, we're in the middle of July, but training camp just around the corner, and that means football is almost back. So, Price, we appreciate you coming on the show tonight. How's it going?
It's going good. Like you said, thank God football's almost here. I mean, we might have reached the pinnacle of off-season conversation with the NFL Top 100 and some of the other lists that comes out. It's like, my God, just start this thing. At least we can get some guys running around in shorts and T-shirts up in St. Joe, and things will start to clarify a little bit because it's time. So, and I know you're a big Cyclones guy. College football, it's even closer. So, fingers crossed we can get that going as much as possible. Today is like the most dead sports day of the year because there's no baseball other than a home run derby. Yes. So thank God the World Cup has carried us because that's been incredible all the way through. But that's mostly over now. So fingers crossed football comes soon.
I'm excited, and can we just mark this day down as well that an Iowa State and a Nebraska fan are talking about football because we're both Chiefs fans, and we can just kind of put the past behind us. We talked about it a little bit off camera. I'm cool with Nebraska. I know a lot of other Iowa State fans aren't on the best terms with Cornhusker fans. Since you guys have left, I've actually been a big Fred Hoiberg guy. I mean, all different stuff. We'll get into the Chiefs in just a second, but just want to let you know, like, it is a joy to talk to you.
Yeah. I mean, that Nebraska basketball team, Nebraska ball, as it's properly called, was insanely fun to root for. Just the way that they played and just like, oh, look, another white guy who shoots corner threes. Love it. They were really fun. I'm not really a big college basketball guy, but I found myself rooting for them. They were a fun team in the tournament. And yeah, like Nebraska, right? Like the days of them beating up on the Big 12, it's changed a lot. Them in the Big 10, they're going to feel the brunt of that this year. Like last year was the year Rayola got hurt. The offensive line didn't come together the way it was supposed to. The defense didn't come together the way it was supposed to. But last year was the season. Like, they had, and I tell you what, if they would have beat USC, which Rayola left that game, the game was tied, and then it just went downhill from there. If they would have beat USC, all they had to do is beat Penn State. They would have been in the college football playoff. Like, that's where they were with their schedule. This year, Indiana, Ohio State, Penn State, like, they got to play all the big dogs in the Big Ten. Oregon, it's going to suck. It's not quite as optimistic. So I'm sure they missed the Big 12 this season, for sure.
Yes. I was super impressed with Nebraska. But we're here to talk about the Chiefs tonight. You do a lot of great work over there, Arrowhead Addict. Doing a lot of great draft previews. I know I was dialed in to all the different stuff of Emmett Johnson being drafted, you having to eat the ears of corn. I mean, it was a whole little shebang over there. Kind of take me through from your perspective as we get ready for the 2026 season. How do you feel like the Chiefs handled the first, missed playoffs year of the Andy Reid era? Obviously, Patrick Mahomes tearing his ACL did not end the way that we wanted it to, did not go the way that we wanted it to. Maybe from your perspective as, doing all the draft preview stuff that you do such a good job of, how have you kind of seen the Chiefs, or what grade would you give them kind of over this offseason?
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of different ways to look at it. Kind of like my big overarching narrative for this season is once the defense, it's tough because if you look at what the defense was statistically last year, it was the better side of the ball. The offense really, really struggled once Mahomes left, obviously, and they were hurt across the offensive line. They lost Xavier Worthy for a part of the time, Rashee Rice, both to injury and suspension. But the defense was the better side of the ball. However, whenever they decided to trade Trent McDuffie, let Jalen Watson walk, let Leo Chanel walk, cut Mike Dana. The defense, it was in really bad shape. So the overarching narrative of this offseason has been the defense. The problem with the defense right now is Jimmy's and Joe's, and the problem with the offense is X's and O's. They obviously make a lot of changes. They kind of quiet fire Matt Nagy. They bring in Eric Bieniemy, who is draped in ideas of accountability and toughness, and they bring in some other coaches. Obviously, they change over to Chad O'Shea at the wide receiver room. They bring in the new running back coach DeMarco Murray from Oklahoma. They're saying like we have talent on this offensive roster. We're going to spend essentially our first 4 picks in the draft on defense, 5 if you account the trade up for Mansour Delane, and really the only thing we're going to do is swap out the coaches and plug in Kenneth Walker here, which I think is, I think it's a risk. I think Andy Reid's taking a lot on himself. Clearly, when he brings in Eric Bieniemy, he's bringing in another Andy Reid guy. The point is the Chiefs' offense does not look like the best offenses in the NFL right now. They run shotgun at one of the highest rates in the NFL. They run under center at one of the lowest rates in the NFL. They're second in the NFL in RPOs run and first in the NFL with RPO pass rate. They pass the ball on 84% of RPOs. So they turn every RPO into a PO. It's just a pass, right? And then you mix that in with a running game that was one of the least explosives in the NFL. It's tough. If you want to tell yourself the optimistic spot, and something that I kind of have been thinking about a lot here lately, is just the Chiefs' 3 worst positions on the roster got totally made over and a major facelift. That being defensive tackle, running back, and nickel back, in my opinion. Because Shamari Connor, Trent McDuffie played in the nickel some, but Shamari Connor was there predominantly. Well, not only did they bring in Kader Kohu, they brought back I shouldn't say brought back, but Chris Roland Wallace will be back. He got injured towards the back part of the season that they're pretty optimistic about. And they draft Jaden Kennedy. Defensive tackle, they were running out Jerry Tillery, Derek Nottie, and Mike Pennell as their predominantly defensive tackles next to Chris Jones. I mean, they were literally making life as hard as possible on Chris Jones. And now you switch that over to Kyrus Tonga, to Peter Woods, hopefully a healthy Omar Norman Lott, and then running back, right? With Emmett Johnson, with Kenneth Walker, even Imari Diamarcado, Jay Knott. They still got Brashard Smith in the hopper as well, too. I mean, those 3 positions could not have a bigger facelift than what they were last year. Now, also, that's not a lot of really premium positions, but I don't know, man. Like, if you're looking for the optimistic view, I think you start there and just say, like, these were our worst spots, and we completely overhauled them, and the change there is crazy as far as the talent level goes. But overall, I think they did a nice job of addressing the needs that they did. FTN, which is a site that I work for, check out their football almanac, a great resource, whether you're looking to win your fantasy league or just want to learn more about the league as a whole. They kind of detailed like basically every running back that's gotten paid over the last 5 or 6 years: DeAndre Swift, Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley. None of those teams have really regretted those deals. Even Tony Pollard, who's played on a bad team, he's been productive. It's a bad team.
Yeah.
So like the Kenneth Walker deal, I feel pretty good about that, at least returning fair value. But I mean, to me, it's really just got to come down to like the offense has got to improve. They've got to get Mahomes back to being the player that he can be and should be. And I think that these last couple of years, they've been making life as hard as possible on him with the scheme and with the players on the field.
Yeah, no, I mean, you made a great point about the shotgun and under center. I saw a stat. I think it was Kay Adams tweeted out that Mahomes has less than 600 under center snaps in his career. And I went, in his career? Like, how is that even possible? So it's absolutely wild that the Chiefs have gone this long without a great running back. And that's all due respect to Isaiah Pacheco and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, or I guess a shell of Clyde Edwards-Helaire, what we wanted him to be. So yeah, it's very encouraging that they finally paid the big bucks for a running back. So
yeah, and I mean, you just got to wonder if like Mahomes is going to fall to his knees the first time he sees Kenneth Walker bounce a run to the outside and get 20 yards. Just
yeah,
I mean, the stark contrast there, and I mean, it really just comes back to how hard is it to pass the ball when the threat of the run does not exist at all. I think back to the Texans game. Obviously, the Texans are a fantastic defense, and they play with a certain FU mentality that is just super fun to watch. But their linebackers, Al Shahir and Toho To'o, did not give a crap about play action. Like, they were running downhill. And, like when they can crash down like that and then like throw in the Chiefs' inability to stretch the field vertically, whether it be because of the pass protection, because of some of the injuries they had towards the latter part of the year, or just the fact that they aren't good at it. Some of that falls on Mahomes, who's not been a great deep ball passer the last couple of years. It totally limits what they're doing. They're just this West Coast offense that's just trying to get the ball out as quick as possible and let guys run after yards after the catch. So I do certainly think that not only just like the effectiveness of Kenneth Walker generating explosives, but the threat of him. Because if you do sit back in too high and play soft zone and just keep everything in front of you, Kenneth Walker can like take over a game. And they've just not had that guy. And obviously, I've got Nebraska stuff all behind me and in front of me, but like Emmett Johnson is another guy who like is going to be able to get what's in front of him and do what he can. He's not Kenneth Walker. He's not nearly as explosive as Kenneth Walker. He's not going to break tackles like, prime Kareem Hunt or whatever, but he's shifty. He's going to be able to get the yards that are there. And, even DeMarcado, I mean, all those guys are an upgrade over what they had last year. So I certainly think that is the optimistic view overall for the draft. I was pretty pleased with their draft. Mansour Delane, like, a lot of people didn't like them taking a corner that high, moving up for him. First off, like, the notion that, like, oh, he would have been there at 9, you don't know that. Because not only are you talking about the teams that are between the Chiefs at 9 and where Delane was picked at 6, but also you've got to factor in teams behind them, where the Cowboys, they took Caleb Downs. I've heard that the Cowboys were really interested in Delane and might have taken him. They could have moved up. So you're not just fighting the teams in between you and where the players picked. You're also fending off what's behind you. And also I look at it like this. You look at most of the top 10 cornerbacks drafted, like cornerbacks inside the top 10. Almost all of them are great players. I know some people talk about the kid from Ohio State that the Lions took a few years ago who was a good player. He just got hurt. It'll come to me. But he was an Ohio State corner. He's been like the one shining example of one that hasn't been good, but Sauce Gardner, J.C. Horn, like guys who are Derek Stingley, guys like that who are taking up that high at corner usually pan out. And I think we all kind of lulled ourselves into this idea of like, oh, they can just turn whatever into good cornerbacks. They really did their best to not play Christian Fulton. I know we like Noah Williams, but there is a shot that Noah Williams doesn't take the next step forward. Player progression isn't always linear. And then we've already talked about the slot corner spot being like an open tryout. So I really think they needed to address corner, whether the trade up was needed or not. Regardless, if they had taken Delane at 9 or where they took him at 6, I was going to like it. The Peter Woods pick surprised me a little bit. I felt like that was going to be edge. But I see the vision, and it's something that I wrote a lot in my draft articles, is like, hey, with Omar Norman-Lott, with Chris Jones, and with Khyiris Tonga, you're really close to having a really plus interior defensive line unit, and they took a guy with as high a ceiling as anyone else in the class as far as pure talent in Peter Woods. And I think just in the offseason videos, whether it be OTAs or his personal workout videos, you see the movement skills with Peter Woods. You see the athleticism and the mismatch opportunity that he provides. So whether it's him or Omar Norman-Lott or Chris Jones, like those guys can mix and match out there. I hope Norman-Lott comes back healthy and plays closer at that 290 that he did at Tennessee, whether he looked like he was like 350. All jokes aside, they had him beef up like crazy last year. Yeah. But hey, he was one of the best players on the field on that Giants game when he was there. And then Tonga is, such a vast upgrade over what they had. So I do see the vision there. I think the pick that makes me the most nervous is our Mason Thomas, just because we've not seen a player like this work for Steve Spagnuolo. Yeah. I mean, who's the guy who's his size? They've not really used it. I'm excited about the prospect because, like, hey, like here's a guy that they took a swing. They took a swing. Like this is a guy that they needed, a guy who can win with speed and burst. But it's not really worked, right? He's 16th percentile in height, 4th percentile in weight, 16th percent in wingspan, 5% in arm length. Like this doesn't sound like a Spagnuolo guy. Now, all that to say, if it works out and they loved him, like, hell yeah, like now you've got some real juice off the edge, and Karlaftis high motor and strong hands, all those things will work great on third down. And like Peter Woods, Chris Jones, R. Mason Thomas, and George Karlaftis, like now you've got something to talk about on the defensive line. But it just concerns me because it's like, even when you listen to Spags talk about him in the offseason, like, well,
He
DeMarco
hated
really
it.
liked
Yeah.
him.
He hated the fit.
DeMarco really liked him. It's like, okay, well, that's great. I'm glad DeMarco Murray really liked him when he coached him at Oklahoma, even though it's on the other side of the ball. But
Yeah.
are you going to play the man? And like, I think the biggest point blank, no matter what's going to happen in the draft this offseason, you were never going to address all the Chiefs' needs that they went into during the draft. You just never were, unless they were going to trade down like 10 times or something crazy and like just draft 15, 16 guys, which we've seen teams do. The Rams have done that famously. Kennedy, I like the coverage skills. I like that they drafted a pure nickel. That's nice. I'm glad to see that. Kind of a more traditional nickelback, whereas this big nickel fad that's become so big with guys like Eman Worry, some of those other guys who are able to play dime. But I was glad to see them bring in a guy like that who, like, the coverage ability is just so sticky. He's competitive enough at the catch point, competitive enough in the run game. Doesn't have the size to play on the outside. And obviously, like, I'm a big fan of the Emmett Johnson pick, not just because of being a Nebraska fan, but like, hey, the running back position needed a dramatic overhaul. I would have taken the under on him being drafted in the 5th round. I would have thought he would have went earlier than that. I thought he was close to the best player available on the board whenever they took him. And it's really weird. Like, you think about Nebraska football, you think about touchdown Tommy Frazier, this like heavy run game, but Dana Holgerson, who's the offensive coordinator for Nebraska, came from Houston, where they ran the pure air raid. And with Raiola, when he was there, his arm talent, the way he liked to play, they played a really heavy blend of under center, traditional run concepts, man gap duo, and then like pure air raid stuff. And it's not uncommon to see Emmett Johnson be flexed out of the backfield and run more than just like an angle route or a shallow cross. He was asked to run some real stuff, good in the screen game. So I think he's a high level fit. I think the goal for him is to become a third down back. I think that will probably be DeMarcado's role. But if he can become that and be a third down back, that'll be a really useful player for them on a rookie contract. And then, you get Cyrus Allen. I get the appeal of his movement skills. I don't know how many Infinity Stones they have to collect as far as nickel slot corners go. They're like, what if we drafted another guy who was like 5'11" and like 180 pounds?
Yeah.
But he moves differently, and like, hey, if he can beat man coverage, which is a huge concern for the Chiefs, they've been dreadful against man coverage last year. If he can get open on 3rd and short and beat man coverage, I'm all for it. And, it's really valuable. And then Nussmeier was just like value that was sitting there. I do think that is a nice plan for the Chiefs, as they have like seemingly every single year had to go find a new backup quarterback, which is fine, but it gets expensive. I mean, there's some backup quarterbacks that are making really good money. You go look at like what Gardner Minshew made this offseason after looking terrible for the Chiefs in the little time that he played. If they can turn Nussmeier into a quality backup quarterback, which, again, I don't think anybody thought he was going to be a 7th round pick, that's a really good deal for them. And that will save them cap, and that, gives them flexibility. And even if they're not able to turn him into that, maybe they're able to just turn a 7th round pick into a 6th round pick with the stink of Mahomes and Andy Reid on him. People are willing to take a shot on a guy who at one time was considered a day 1, day 2 pick.
Yeah. That's great. I feel like we just went through your whole draft preview again. That was awesome. I love that.
Sorry, I've got the whole spiel. You're not the first person to ask that question. So just did I forget anyone? Delane Woods,
I think
Thomas, Kennedy. Yeah, that's the whole class. It's always tough because I feel like they should have had a 3rd round pick, but that was gone with the Delane. Delane.
You are the Chiefs. You are the Chiefs draft guy. So that makes sense that you would be dialed in on all of that. One of the things we want to talk about is the most important Chief going into 2026. And before we do that, I'm just kind of curious because my mind initially goes to one person that I'll reveal in just a second, but the wide receiver room. Right. We've talked a little bit on our show just about Rashee Rice and how basically untrustworthy he's become with his immature actions off the field and things like that. How do you kind of assess the wide receiver room? Are you as high on Rashee Rice being a focal point of this offense as other people are? Because we've made the point that just with his unreliability, like that's not something you can bank on. How do you kind of assess the wide receiver room going into 2026?
Yeah, Rashee Rice is a tough case. Like, I have seen people try to make the case for him to be a top 15, top 10 wide receiver, because when he's on the field, the productivity is close to that. However, there's like, that's kind of ignoring the elephant in the room of like, he's not on the field a lot.
Correct.
And some of that's because his quarterback blew out his knee, and some of that's of his own doing. You know, and I think this is something that gets lost sometimes. Like, think about like Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill has never been suspended in the NFL for like disciplinary action. That feels impossible. But it's like, hey guys, there's been another Tyreek Hill thing, and it's just like the exacerbation of like having to deal with and manage that. That stuff matters too. And for everything that Rashee Rice has done, there's been like 2 or 3 things that he hasn't gotten in trouble for. So that's part of it too, right? Is like that should go into, do you want to give this guy another contract? How much longer can he keep, like, essentially, quote unquote, getting away for it? We don't even know if he will get suspended for this break of his parole. But with all that being said, with Rice, the productivity is very, very good. It is because he has the size and frame to be a volume wide receiver in an offense that needs it. Kelsey isn't that guy anymore. He used to be. Xavier Worthy does not have the frame to do that and doesn't have the skill set to do that. And Tyquan Thornton's never been that as well too. And then like, so you're kind of left with this, basically like it kind of has to be Rashee Rice. And the way that they use him, I will give the Chiefs a ton of credit. I did not see the vision with Rashee Rice when they drafted him. This is a guy who came out, compared himself to DeAndre Hopkins during the draft, played on the outside, a contested catch guy, and they saw a dynamic guy after the catch, made him a power slot, and turned his game closer into a Amon-Ra St. Brown type of player. But I mean, look, will I be surprised if he plays the whole season and has 1,200 yards and double-digit touchdowns? Absolutely not, because I know he's capable of it. Now, where does that put him overall as a wide receiver? He's a guy who gets force-fed the ball. He's a guy who struggles to beat man coverage. He doesn't win down the field consistently. He doesn't, in my opinion, thrive over the middle of the field, right? Like, a lot of his passes are their slants, their bubble screens, their quick hitches, where he finds his soft spot in zone. He's got a long ways to go before, in my opinion, he could consider himself in that top 15 conversation. I think he'll be productive. I think he's a guy you'd love to have on your fantasy team, but I don't know if I can look at him and say, like, hey, this is a true one. Yeah. Xavier Worthy's kind of been like the MVP of the offseason. Like, Chad O'Shea and them have been really talking him up. Yep. Part of that is because, like, well, who the hell else are they going to talk about? I can't talk about Rashee Rice. I mean, maybe they talk about Tyquan Thornton. But I will say this about Worthy. I do think that there's ceiling left there. When he came out of Texas, he ran routes. Like, he was a guy who did more than just go fast. And personally, I feel like the sooner they are willing to use him over the middle of the field, I think those are where some of his best plays have come. I think that the best thing for them is stop using him like a deep vertical threat. And it's not because he's not fast, obviously he is, but between the size limitations with him and the fact that him and Mahomes just haven't ever been able to seem to get on the same page downfield, I like him better, like, even though he's not this player, because nobody is, like a Devontae Smith, where like he is kind of that mismatch move guy. Like, I compared him to Tank Dell. This is back when Tank Dell was doing really well with CJ Stroud, but like I think he could be like 75-80% of Devontae Smith. Devontae Smith is so good at the catch point for his size. And then use Tyquan Thornton like MVS. Like, there was a season that MVS had like 650 yards and 3 or 4 touchdowns. The next season was putrid from him, and that's why he's not, didn't finish out his contract in Kansas City. But him and Thornton have shown the ability to be on the same page down the field. He's been better there. He's bigger than Worthy. And he's very quick too. So I think I like that the most. It does still feel like they need another guy, and I don't know if that's just a veteran off the scrap heap. Yeah, at this point, it feels like they won't make the Stephon Diggs move or a player like that. I mean, heck, DeAndre Hopkins, just a veteran leader who was spoke of highly, who's played in here, a guy who can line up on the X. My big concern with the wide receiver room is they have 0 blocking wide receivers. I know that sounds stupid, but you want to go look at Juju Smith-Schuster snaps and the amount that he played. Part of it's because he was the best blocker they have. I mean, the biggest guy that they have in the wide receiver room right now is Rashee Rice. So they need another guy like that. And, like, hey, guess what? Like, even if you want to dream a dream and Tyreek Hill somehow comes back healthy, it's not Tyreek. Like, he's not a guy who's going to come in and push the piles of blocker. And right now in the NFL, you need guys who can do that. There are wide receivers who line up condensed formations and cut the backside off of a pin and pull or something like that. So I do think it's something that they're missing. I hope that they do find a veteran that they're able to add. As far as Jalen Royals and Cyrus Allen goes, for Jalen Royals, I'm going to need to see anything before I feel good about it. I always felt like he was kind of a Rashee Rice insurance plan, and then he got hurt, and it sounds like the injury could be a chronic type of issue that lingers for him. Not sure about that. Liked him coming out, extremely explosive down the field. Came from a weird offense out at Utah State where it's like he's lined up super wide outside the hashes. Basically played in the exact same spot every single snap. And like Cyrus Allen, I mean, again, the movement skills are exciting, but I just need to see how the puzzle all fits together, because I can see the vision of Rice as the power slot, Worthy as kind of the mix and match move piece, whether it be a gadget move or just like over the middle of the field. Thornton's creating space, but I don't know who's blocking, and I don't necessarily know who you're going to beat man coverage on third down.
Yeah.
And right now that's a concern for sure.
Yeah. Are you on the Jeff Caldwell train at all?
I very famously made the Moneyball meme where it's, this is Jeff Caldwell.
Yeah.
He's athletic as Calvin Johnson. The only problem is he's got a 9% career drop rate and has only ever been good at Lindenwood or wherever the hell he went.
Yep.
So like, hey, he's got all the talent in the world. From everything I've heard from people who've been out there watching practice, like right now he is an athlete that is kind of figuring out how to play wide receiver. Like there's just virtually nothing off the line of scrimmage as far as release packages go. Inconsistent at the catch point. Hey, you got a great athlete in the building. If you can teach him to play wide receiver, that sounds like a project to me, right? Like, I think that he's going to take some time. Maybe he can carve out a role for himself in special teams. Obviously, he's freakish athletically, but there's a reason why he was a UDFA, despite testing like Calvin Johnson at the combine. Right. Actually, I don't think he got a combine invite. I just pro day. But regardless, hey, like, good, you got it. And that's something that like I appreciate about the Chiefs UDFA class in general. They bring in Deshaun Singleton, another Cornhusker, a nice like thumping safety. They bring in Xavier Nwampa from Iowa. They bring in John Michael Gillenborg. Regardless, they brought in a lot of they brought in a lot of high level athletes though, which like it felt like in the draft they're like, okay, we're gonna stick to our board. We're gonna take the best players that we feel have a high floor. And then in UDFA, we're going to take big swings on athletes and hope that we can turn some of these guys into core special teamers or more, right? Yeah. And they've consistently done that. Turk Wharton, Chris Roland Wallace, they have found value there, whether it be Mike Caliendo, guys like that. Like that, those players have roles. So overall, I think that I'm not super optimistic on the Jeff Caldwell thing. Maybe in a year or two.
Yeah. No, I get it. I just wanted for the vibe just to get a Caldwell Chiefs jersey. But that's I'm glad you mentioned Xavier Worthy as we kind of transition to talk about most important Chief, because I'll just show my cards. You mentioned the Devontae Smith comp that he potentially could become a version of that. I think he is the most important Chief. I'm in the camp of I don't know what's going to happen with Rashee Rice. I don't know if he's going to be trustworthy in his off the field stuff. All those different things. And so for the offense, if you get the breakout Xavier Worthy season that everyone's been talking about and raving about, to your point, it might just be something that people are talking about to fill up the offseason. I have high hopes for Xavier Worthy to turn to that guy. I think he's the most important player for this offense between whether or not they make the playoffs or it's another dud year and we start having harder conversations. Where do you go with that question of this one guy could determine the entire season for the Chiefs, outside of Patrick Mahomes, of course?
Let me turn the table here. What does a breakout, like, give me the number. What does a breakout Xavier Worthy season look like? Like, what are the,
that's a great question.
The yards and the touchdowns?
Yeah, I think like I would love to say he could get to 1,000 yards. I really would. I think if Xavier Worthy has an 800 to 1,000 yard season and is a significant red zone target, where he gets 8 to 10 touchdowns, that would be like that would be over the moon about that. So I think that there's potential for that to happen because Chad O'Shea is one of the most important pieces I think of this offseason as well, bringing him in and teaching these wide receivers, him being vocal in mini camps and stuff. So that's kind of how I would view it. Obviously, if that doesn't happen, then it becomes who do you turn to for the offense, and you hope Kenneth Walker and Emmett Johnson and guys can fill in the pieces. But that's how I would kind of look at my hope for Xavier Worthy, where I think he can get to.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree with you. Like, the number I kind of thought in my head was 800.
Yeah.
Like, I just never see a 1212 season for Xavier Worthy. He's just not that type of player. And to be fair, I don't think that's what they drafted him for. But I certainly see your reasoning. Like, my only counter to that be if, like, okay, if Rashee Rice gets suspended again, or if he gets hurt, or whatever, there is a world where Xavier Worthy has 800 yards and 6 touchdowns, and Tyquan Thornton has like 402, and the Chiefs wide receiver room is still really bad, right? Like, I think back to the season prior where Worthy had 638 receiving yards. He played every game, except for the last one where they didn't have to play that game. He was really good his rookie season. Big part of that was because Rashee Rice wasn't there, and the Chiefs wide receiver core was still a problem, even after getting Hollywood Brown back late in that season. So, like, I think, like, yeah, man, if Rashee Rice plays 17 and you get 800 yards from Xavier Worthy, like, oh boy, like, now you really got a stew going. But I just think because of his size and his limitations, like, I have a hard time saying most important. For me, it's Josh Simmons. I think every concern that you might have about Mahomes' mobility, and obviously, like, we're leaving out the obvious, like, oh, it's Patrick Mahomes. Yeah, like, if Patrick Mahomes isn't on the field, we've seen what it looks like. Yeah. But, like, going beyond that obvious thing, like, Simmons, first off, was treated like an elite tackle by the offense almost immediately. Left on an island at an extremely high rate. The Chiefs play with 5 blockers exclusively at one of the highest rates in the league already, and that was with Juwan Taylor. Well, now you're plugging in Jalen Moore, a guy who's basically never played right tackle in the NFL. If Josh Simmons is the player that he can be as far as what we saw on the field last year, that instantly turns your offensive line from, like, an average one, which I know there's been a lot of dialogue about how good the Chiefs offensive line really is, where Suamataia showed some real flashes and, like, is at least an average guard. You've got an elite center and an elite right guard. It doesn't matter what Jalen Moore, as long as Jalen Moore's not, like, worst in the league at right tackle, if Josh Simmons is that guy, you have a very good offensive line that's going to be protecting a quarterback coming off an ACL injury and a running game that needs to get going. You can lean on the strengths of Humphrey and Trey Smith, but if Josh Simmons isn't there, or if Josh Simmons takes a step back and he's mediocre, well, now, like, it's hard to chip on both sides, right? Like, that really limits what you can do. And I do think that there is a world, like, Juwan Taylor, something that stood out to me is he didn't like playing with a chip because of how wide he aligned, which, Chris Collinsworth was also very aware of. People, like, you didn't see a lot of chip help on the right side. Notably, Josh Simmons broke his wrist because Kareem Hunt was chipping to his side. I think that there's a chance, coming from the Shanahan system and stuff with Jalen Moore, that they get chip help on the right side, which makes Jalen Moore a stronger pass protector, and then you get Josh Simmons on the left side playing island. I mean, I just think back to, those ferocious pass rushes of the 49ers when the Chiefs had Mitchell Schwartz and Eric Fisher. Like, Eric Fisher got help because Mitch Schwartz could pitch a shutout on the right side. And I think Josh Simmons got that type of talent. Like, physically, he's as gifted or more gifted than Mitch Schwartz was. Mitch Schwartz was just a freaking robot and a student of the game who was able to use technique and tape study to do what he did. So, like, if Josh Simmons reaches his potential this season, it makes everything make so much more sense for the offense. I expect the defense to have its struggles this year. You're just not going to plug in as many guys as they are this year. I think it'll look like 2022. I think it'll be a team that, week 8, week 9, you look down and they're towards the bottom part of the league in EPA per play allowed. Teams will test Mansour Delane pretty quickly just to see what he can do. You can't expect Peter Woods, Omar Norman-Lott to move the needle right away, and we know what the Chiefs are working at edge. But I do think that it'll start to come on later as the weather turns. And, notably, the Chiefs had to win some games pretty close or with low scores. Like, I think they held the Bengals to, like, 23 points in that AFC Championship game that year. And they needed every bit of it, right? So, I just think that the offense is going to need to score some points and probably quickly, especially going against teams like Denver and some of the other teams that they're going to face early.
Yeah. No, Josh Simmons was like 1B for me. So it was between Worthy and Simmons. I totally agree with the reasoning there, just because, like you said, because of Worthy's limitations, and the downside is probably more reasonable than the upside of Worthy. But all right, so here's a scenario as we finish up. Rashee Rice doesn't pan out like we want to this year. Either he gets suspended, or let's be real, he's got a lot going on off the field. He's just not the same player. He has his struggles, maybe drops some passes, whatever it is. You have to pick right now whether or not the Chiefs make the playoffs in predicting the season, or you can't watch football this year. In mid-July, what is your prediction if that's a scenario for the Kansas City Chiefs?
So my choice is either I cannot watch football for the full season, or the Chiefs miss the playoffs. Like, I can watch football,
or you
but
predict
the Chiefs miss the play.
Or you predict what the Chiefs do this year. You have to give a prediction right now.
I think for me, like, I want to watch football. Like, football is probably the only sport that like you know, the World Cup has been a lot of fun, and I'll watch the NBA playoffs. I don't watch regular season NBA games because, like, oh, is LeBron playing tonight? Probably not. You know, like, load management. But the NBA playoffs, especially later rounds, there's stakes, right?
Yeah.
Like, I can sit down and plop down and watch, like, 4-6 Baylor and like 3-7 TCU go at it and still thoroughly enjoy myself, partly because I'm a big draft guy and just love it and be like, oh, hey, like this guy looks good, like I like this guy. Bud Clark, he seems like a good player, so like I can sit down and do that. So like whatever I have to do to continue to watch football, I will do that because I need it. And there's nothing like Saturdays with all the games going on, you know, going into that morning to evening slate and then a night shift, and it's like, oh, Texas A&M, you know, they choked again, like, you know, and then heading to the podcast after, and then like Sunday morning rolls around, and then it's red zone. So, and I mean, you know, and then you got Thursday, Monday night. So whatever option allows me to continue watching football, please. I love the Kansas City Chiefs, but my love for football goes beyond just them.
Okay, so in order to do that, this is the scenario. You have to predict mid-July, whatever today is, July 13th, what the Kansas City Chiefs record and or stakes will be in 2026.
Oh, I got to think about it as far as like what the stupid records are now. 10-7? Yeah, 10-7. I think like the most common thing that I see for them, like, you know, we've seen a lot of record predictions and stuff. I think 11-6 is probably the most common one that you see. I'll lean just slightly a little bit lower than that 10-7, just because, like, I do think that there is something to, like, the last couple of years. You think back to that season where they won so many one-score games. There was a little bit of an aura where it's like, all right, we're late in games. This is where we make mistakes and they make the plays. Some of that is gone. Teams don't go into Arrowhead clutching their pearls like they used to.
Yep.
They're not unbeatable anymore. And, you know, maybe that one game difference is just like Mahomes, like there was a scramble that he had a year or two ago. This year he doesn't have it, or, you know, whatever. But I do think that they make the playoffs. And like, you know, I think like one thing that's been weird with the Chiefs is like with Mahomes is like they've either missed the playoffs or they're like AFC Championship Super Bowl. Like maybe that's just the year that they lose in the divisional. Right? Like, we've not really seen that outcome. In fact, I feel like we'd be like, so, like, was this a failure or not? Like, I feel like it'd be a weird feeling, but maybe this is the year that they lose in the division or something. I do think that, you know, I've heard that this is a rebuilding year, you know, like an overhaul or that type of thing. I do think, I don't think, obviously it's an overhaul of the defense. I don't think overhaul is the correct term, because that implies that, like, a lot of things are changing. The offense is essentially the same. It's just Kenneth Walker comes back and then they swap tackles, but they had both guys on a contract this last year. So I do think that there is some growth that needs to happen here. And maybe it's just player development, right? Like Ashton Gelati, you know, like Noel Williams, Jaden Hicks, like all those guys, like they gotta take steps forward. But I do think that there's a development period that has to happen before they kind of reach that full like second wave, second generation, where it's not just Kelsey, Mahomes, Chris Jones taking over games, because that's not what they're going to be able to be forever.
Yeah, unfortunately. But the last time there was a rebuild for the Chiefs, it went pretty well. So all things considered, if it's another rebuild for the Chiefs, hopefully.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Yes.
Fingers crossed. Price, thanks so much for coming on the show. Where can we find you and all your different content that you do great work for?
Yeah, you can just follow me at Price A Carter on Twitter. I pretty much post all my stuff there. I don't write much for the website anymore now that draft season's over. I do occasionally during the season, use just a little bit more long form, and then I chart passing game plays and stuff over at FTN Football, which is some of the stats that we help use to accumulate things like DVOA and some of the other stats as well too. And then on Sports Radio 810 WHB here in Kansas City.
Love it. I love it. Well, again, we appreciate you coming on the show. Hopefully we are rejoicing that the Chiefs are back in playoff contention and not the other way, because then there's some harder conversations to have. But Price, we appreciate you coming on.
Of course. Thanks, man.